Welcome to episode one of London Day, where we are going to dive into how to beat the G6 setups in the tactical London system with the knight on c3. And this is going to feature a very cool game that was played in the US Chess Championships earlier today between Sam Sevian playing against Ray Robson. This h4 being an idea that's been known for quite a while, where you go h5 and you trying to get a big attack going against the king, even potentially with an exchange sacrifice and just flooding all the pieces over to the attack like this, which explains why Robson played the move of h5. And in later episodes of the series, you'll also be able to expect more of these high-level games in the London, seeing how to win with the white pieces. And Sevian plays this move of knight e5 here. And normally this approach of knight e5, queen d2, and castling long would not be so effective if the pawns were back on their starting squares. But the reason that it's a little bit more effective here is because when h5 is played, it gives us the option to later go g4 and try to open up their king side in this way. Now, the position after bishop f5 and bishop b5 is one that has occurred quite a lot of times in practice, but it's also clear that it took Ray Robson, who was previously a 2700 plus feet AGM, a little bit by surprise here, where Sevian said after the game that his opponent was taking a lot of time on the moves and they're starting to make some mistakes already. And the move of knight a5 here is a novelty, one that's unlikely to be repeated, as it means that the knight on e5 is left completely uncontested. And even knight c4 isn't really a threat because you're covering it with two pieces anyway. Instead, there are two other moves that are probably better approaches. The first one would be to play a move like rook to c8 here, and try to get some counterplay going on the c file, as it were. But in that case, we can take on c6 with the bishop, and then play knight a4 to get a bit of a clamp going on the queen side. And here I'll quickly show you actually a game that Alexander Bortnik, one of the big experts of the Tactical London, actually played against Anish Giri, actually beating him in a Tile Tuesday last year. But in the meantime, if you're enjoying the video, do make sure to like, and also, if you are relatively new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe, and that way you'll be able to keep up with the next episodes, not just for London Day, also for the other series coming up for Sicilian Day, and also Benko Day. So, in this position, Giri should have played the move of knight to e8, which at the first glance appears a mistake, because g4 and, we're just opening up their king. But the point is that actually black can play a move of f6 here and sort of fight fire with fire a little bit. For example, something like gf5 takes, and all these exchanges would be quite good for black actually, because now the white structure is a little bit weak, and it's maybe not so easy for us to effectively attack their pawn despite appearances. However, what we can do is we can play this tricky move of knight f7, where we sacrifice the pawn, but we do get quite good compensation here, as, we can play moves like long castles, bishop h6, and with black structure being quite weak and their king being quite exposed, we are going to have fairly decent compensation in a position like this. So that's the way that the black should have played it, like knight e8 to hold the fort, but it's not the easiest move to find on a human point of view, because it looks like the opposite of what you should normally be doing, perhaps. But black played knight d7 instead, and the difference now is that after takes, the white was able just to recycle the knights with knight to c5, queen d8, long castle, and already white is just ready to go g4, bishop h6, h5, and mate the black king. And because we have such a stable position in the center, there's not a lot that black can really do about this. In the game, black played queen b6, but white just went ahead with the standard g4 and h5. And okay, the computer will tell you that this is objectively not the most precise, that, it's better to flick in f takes g4 and kind of build up the attack in this way, like rook g1 or even rook e1, and, just go for the attack on the dark squares would be the most effective. However, h5 does still set a lot of practical problems, and in the game, black was not brave enough to, take the pawn and, realize that it's actually not going to be a mate here with the the king kind of able to run away from the attack later on and such. In the game, black tried e5 and tried to counterattack, and arguably this just made the attack even stronger, where white played the move of bishop h6. Actually, it turns out bishop h6 is probably not the most precise, but okay, it's blitz chess. What white should technically do is actually play bishop e5 and sacrifice a piece, but with the idea that if they take, then you just end up getting a really strong attack here after takes and queen h6, and yeah, you're just having just too many threats in this position. Like if they try to cover with queen e7, well, then you're able to win the queen, and you take the queen with check, and you will be up material when the dust settles here as such. So, but yeah, bishop h6 was played. Rook b8 was a good defense by Geary, threatening a checkmate, forcing a little bit of an ugly knight b3, but again, black starts to play quite precisely to survive, and it's one thing that I really like about the tactical London is that you actually get good attacking chances even if you don't play it in the very best way. Like you can still make a mistake or two and still win against a very strong player, as this game proves. Because rather than playing the cold-blooded FG6 and again realizing that the check on H6 is actually not going to lead to a checkmate, that the king is able to sort of get away in a sense. Instead of this, black played queen b4, trying to get the queens off, but the problem is that white's attack is now just too fast after bishop g7. And black's idea was to play queen takes a2 and try to threaten checkmate, because if you play king takes, then now the attack is going to be winning for white, where you are able to play like queen h6 and just flood the piece into the attack, like fg4, d5, and black has a king just being attacked by a whole army of pieces, which is going to be a bit too much here. But after queen a2, the problem is after queen h6, that white defends the bishop, threatens mates, and if you try to give some checks here, you can sort of see that the checks do run out after a few moves, where we are covering queen e3 after all. Yeah. So in the game after f6, white took queen b1, and yeah, in fact, this is how the game concluded, where the threat of mate basically leaves black with no good way to deal with queen h8 checkmate, and therefore black just resigned here. That's kind of the first inspirational example I want to share, just so you kind of know how white would go about attacking in these kind of positions, because it's one thing to say g4, h5, bishop h6, but you can see there's a little bit of salty. They can sometimes be involved in playing it the absolute best way. Now, if they play knight takes c5 instead and decide just go for trying to open up the center, a few different moves have been played. There's actually an Aragaisi Grishuk game where Aragaisi beat Grishuk with this queen takes c5 move. But I'll admit it wasn't really because of the opening, and therefore the move I'd recommend here is to castle long and play it a bit more aggressively like this with knight e5, rook he1, and then after knight c6 going bishop h6, so not rushing to take the pawn, but just playing for the attack instead. It turns out black has to be quite precise here actually, where, to give you an idea, like the engine's top lines are moves such as e5 or bishop takes c3, which are not really the most human moves in the position. The move of rook c8 are probably a more human move, but I think would be not that bad for black in all fairness. But we're still going to get our compensation with, say, if rook c8, for example, like we can take g4 and just kind of rip open the black king, where even though we're down a pawn at the moment, okay, they can't take the pawn because queen d4 forks the king and the bishop. But for the pawn, we are getting quite a strong attack against the black king, and the attack on the h file will give us quite good compensation. And again, black has to be quite precise here in order to maintain the balance, a level position that your opponents are very unlikely to show in the games. Especially keeping in mind that this tactical London is not so theoretical. It's not something your opponents are so likely to have studied very deeply unless they're already a professional chess player as such. So after bishop h6, in this game between Aragaisi against Paravian in chess.com Rapid of 2022, black decided to take on h6, but that's actually a big mistake because it now allows the white queen to get into the attack on the king very quickly. And after e6, white just went g4 and is just ripping open the black king. Turns out h5 is actually a little bit of a mistake here, that the move that white should play again, and this is sort of something that's a common misunderstanding with the tactical London, where people just assume you just play h5 after hg4. We've really seen a couple of times before that's actually more effective just to take back the pawn. Because after takes, white has a very nice trick here of the move of knight to e4, using the pin on the pawn to the queen. But if they take our rook, we go knight g5, and we basically are either giving checkmate with the move queen to h7, or to have to give up the queen, which just leaves us with a nice material advantage and decisive advantage with the attack on the king. But okay, h5 was played in the game, which objectively does allow black to hold, but even this position is actually still it's still one that's quite tough for black to defend. After rook g1, black still has to be a little bit precise here and why bring all of the pieces into the attack as we can see. Note by the way that black's maybe not so keen to play a move like bishop h5 because after queen h5 we do have the pin on the pawn as it were. So black played bishop f5 in the game, and after queen f4, yeah, black again continues to defend quite well with knight c6. So we're seeing an example where black is actually defending quite strongly after an earlier mishap. But after a few moves, yeah, black does start to falter here, and in this position, black probably should either bring the final piece in a play of a move like rook d8, just allowing you to take back with the pawn without running into knight d5 is kind of the idea here. But instead, queen d4 was played. Black was trying to trade off the queens, which obviously, again, we're 2 pawns down. We have no interest in trading the queens here. So queen g3, and it turns out that white is in fact better here due to black not having really a good way to deal with h takes g6, where black really had to play to move queen f6 if he had to try to go into this endgame and just give back the pawns if he wanted to hold here. I mean, this ending is definitely one where white can still press due to the more active pieces and the king being a bit unsafe. But it is also true if black plays it perfectly that, an endgame like this one probably should be holdable for black. Okay, you're up a pawn, like you can try forever here as white. But after knight b4 instead, yeah, now after white's move of king d2, it's just very hard to get out of this hg6, and black's attempt to keep things close with king g7 and f5 just completely backfired. As after rook e6, we've already got back our material, and we still have a big attack on the king with the heavy pieces. If they play a move like rook a8, you just have queen c7 to just mate them like this. And after rook a8 covering queen c7, well then there was rook e7. And in the game, black played king f6 and allowed queen g5 checkmate, and that was the end of the game from there. So that's showing not just the way that black played in this Seve and Robson game with this knight a5 mistake. It also means that even if they play something a little bit different, you'll be ready and know how to attack, like when we should play g4 and how we follow up that attack. Based on these different patterns that we see from the engine analysis. And again, it's a common thread that black has to defend very, very precisely, like an almost superhuman level. And if they make one mistake, yeah, we just get a monstrous attack against their king. And even if they play the best moves, our position is still fairly good. So after knight a5, Sevian just went g4, and black decided not to take, because if you take, you are opening the door for h5. And now h5 works a little bit better with the support of the knights, as now if black plays 3 takes h5, we're just ripping open the lines in front of the king, whichever way they take back. And a position like this is a good example where black might be 2 pawns up, but there's not going to be a defense to the attack down the h file here. And you can definitely beat a lot of players, like definitely a lot of club players and online players around 2000 and below, pretty easily with an attack like this. And you can see in this game it's even working against a world top 50 player as such. So Sevian just castles long, and again, like obviously black doesn't really want to take on g4 here because this sort of attack is just again going to be way too strong. And I'm just showing you the patterns again and again just so they can kind of sink in, so that when you get this in the game you'll be able to easily find it for yourself. Like after fg4, like black only has bad captures in this position, and after knight g4 we can even just take and queen g5, and it's sort of a typical kind of tactic where you just use the pin on the h file and give checkmate with rook h5 from there. So after rook c8, white plays move king b1. This is very common prophylaxis when you have opposite side castling, where you're just getting off that open c file. After queen b6, black's threat here. I guess you guys see what black's threat is, right? Let's make sure that you're all paying attention to everything. Turns out that black's threat here is to play the move rook takes c3 and remove the defender of the bishop with queen takes b5. So that's the reason why Sebian played bishop e2. It defends the pawn on g4 and keeps our bishop safe. At this point, black's best try is probably to play rook takes c3 and sack the exchange. But you're not really getting a lot of compensation for it, to be fair. So in the game, black played a move knight c4, which is the other try, but you might notice after bishop c4, dc4 that now the c file is closed, meaning that white king is very, very safe. And when the center is very stable and when our king is relatively safe, that gives us the room to just go for the attack completely unhindered with bishop h6. Again, if they take, it just helps our queen get into the attack like we saw in the Aragai C. Paravian game before. After rook fd8, white played bishop g7, and now this is opening up the position. Yeah, it's true that black has a bit of a blockade with knight h5, but this doesn't really matter all that much because we do have the attack down the g file and the pressure against g6. It's also worth pointing out that knight g4 is also quite strong, with ideas of going queen h6 and bringing a piece in the attack that way. But rook g1 is certainly very thematic, and after rook to h8, the reason the black played rook h8 was just so that there wouldn't be ideas of rook takes h5 or using the pin later. But the position is still very bad for black, however, and after knight f6, well, now we see white start to use his advantage in the center as well with the move of d5. And the bishop just really struggles to find a square here because, let's say if you play bishop f5, then already white can play a move of takes and sacrifice the exchange, but the attack is just going to be tremendously strong thanks to the move of d6. Well, and if you spot this d6 move, by the way, realizing that they can't take because the pawn is needed to defend the knight. But on the other hand, if we're able to get in like rook g1 and rook queen g7 ideas in some positions, then yeah, it's just going to be a monstrous attack. So in the game, black played rook cd8, which does allow us to grab a pawn. And the rest of the game was basically just sort of a consolidation phase from white here, where white plays move queen d4, which it's a good move just to kind of keep things pinned up. And okay, it does keep the pin on the d file, but for the moment, black doesn't really have a great way to take advantage of it. And I do like showing you guys the full games because that way you're not just seeing how to, get a crushing position out of the opening, which is perhaps the main theme. You're also then learning how to actually turn that position into a win. And in this position, actually, Sebian rather, should have played the move of b3 so that after rook h4, we can play queen a7 and stay a pawn ahead because now our knight is defended by the pawn. Whereas knight e3 is not quite as good a version in comparison because now black has options available such as queen f4 and getting a bit of a counterattack going. And yeah, I mean the position is still much better for white. We are still up a pawn. But you can see that with black having ideas like queen f3 to get the pawn back, that a position like this is going to be quite a bit messier in comparison, and it gives black more chances to try and swindle us, as it were. Fortunately, in the game, black played bishop c8, which was a little bit passive, and then the move rook f4 was admittedly a little bit of a blunder. I know it has to be said that black's position is already pretty difficult, but okay, let's give it over to you guys. Can you find the move that white played here? Not just the move, but actually the next two moves that white played in order to get a completely winning position. So in this position, I think what many people do is their knee-jerk reaction be pawn is attacked, pawn must be defended, and play a move like rook gf1, which still keeps a big advantage, of course, but the winner is to play the move rook h1 here. Because if queen f2, we have the move knight f5 to discover an attack on the queen. But in the game after queen g3, white has to move knight e2 to fork the queen and the rook. And it means that now white is just up a full exchange for nothing. And the key in these positions, not to sort of play too passively, because if you wait too long, maybe black can, trade the queens and try to get these pawns rolling. That's really the only way they can kind of turn the game around, because our king is obviously very safe here. So what we want to do is we want to maximize the mobility of the pieces. So notice how with rook d4, we're keeping the initiative and also preparing to swing that rook over, where with the move rook dh4, we set it up so that if black were to play a move such as queen takes d5, well, we just go rook h7 and we just give checkmate basically with the king g7 and using the pin on the on the knight for the checkmate, as it were. And also, of course, if knight g8, yeah, we just take it and mate on h8 in this style. So black plays rook g8, d6 again. This move just opening up the black king. Take, take. And white's also threatening knight e4, hitting the fork on the knight and on the queen. So king f8 takes. I mean, now white's up material. It's just a matter of just finishing it off. And maybe we don't have a forced checkmate, but what we can do is we can just promote one of our pawns. Yeah, we've got free connected passes, and we can push the a pawn and still keep our king relatively safe with the two pawns covering. So queen f d6, queen e7. I think trading queens will still be winning for white, but in the game, white found an even faster way with queen b8 and rook h7. And yeah, I mean, at this point, black can't even really take the rook without running into, problems with the king coming under a mating attack. Like, there's no way the king's going to just survive out in the open on g5 here. And also, of course, the knight is still under attack. Like, say, if you play knight f2, you can even play queen to d2 and, just fork the king and the knight like this. In the game, black played queen c5, and yeah, white's just up too much material and decides to simplify and trade off one of the attacking pieces, just so you're not worried about the counter attack on your king. And then yeah, a5, and the rest was pretty easy from here. If they take the pawn, we've got rook g1 to eliminate black's last pawn, and after knight d4, yeah, a few more moves were played, but the result wasn't in any doubt, and at this point, black just resigned. So yeah, that's basically a nice little example here, and just to do a very quick recap so that you consolidate the ideas, we can see that, Sebian played the tactical London, and Robson went for a Grunfeld kind of setup with bishop g6 and g5. But White was able to attack by going knight e5, queen d2, and then just going to f3 and a later g4, long castles and bishop h6. And with these standard attacking ideas, White was able to get a really good attacking position while still keeping his own king relatively safe, and this allowed White to get a very convincing win against a world top 50 player. On that note, I hope that yeah you enjoyed this training. I trust that since you watched it to the end, that you did enjoy it and got some value out of it. Do let me know in the comments below. Are there any particular things that you'd like me to cover in London Day? Like, are there any setups from here that you find quite annoying to face, or just some particular type of move they can play, or some idea that you're really curious about? If so, do let me know in the comments so that I can have some more ideas for some further episodes. But yeah, really excited about this new series and really excited to share with you the three best chess opening weapons. This one being the best one for white in the London system. So yeah, on that note, I'll see you in the next video and take care.